Welcome on this beautiful morning. It's October 3rd, and as a German, I have to say that it's the day of German Union, and for me, it's a very, very important day. It's a day that has a special place in my heart because without the German Union, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have met Philip. There's, lots of things that my family wouldn't have been able to do. So I'm always very thankful to my family that went into the streets to fight for democracy and freedom and to celebrate this day today. So, and I know we have a fellow German today joining us. Rita is with us, Mimi's mom, so welcome to you as well. From where we are sheltering in place, from sacred spaces where folks are socially distancing themselves.
We are gathered as God's people, called to the table where brokenness nourishes us with simple grace.
From virtual communities from all over the world, with families gathered in living spaces.
We are gathered as God's faithful community, serving, living, caring wherever we go.
From neighborhoods made up of those of every class, every race, every branch of faith.
We are gathered as witnesses to God's hope and peace, which have not disappeared in every place, in every person in this uncertain time.
Welcome in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Great God of all creation, who are we that you are mindful of us? You who set the stars in motion, who launched waves crashing against the shores, who knows the heights and the depths of the world. Why do you bother with us? You count the hairs on our heads and call us each by name. Give us your wisdom and uphold us by your spirit. You tend to us and care for us, and we do not understand why. We cannot grasp your love for us, O God, for it is unlike us to be that loving and forgiving. We become enmeshed by our own needs and wants and desires, and we fail to see beyond anything on our own little circles. Turn us around, O God. Help us to see as you see and to reach out as you reach out. Remind us once again of the sacredness of our ordinary day-to-day lives.
By your Spirit, teach us to live truly as beings little lower than angels. In your mercy, O God, forgive who we are and bless who we will be. Amen.
God is here as we are people, need to offer praise and prayer. May we find in a fuller measure what it is in Christ we share. It has been the world around us, all our valleys, hills, and rocks. Wait the coming of the Spirit into open minds and hearts. Here are symbols to remind us of our lifelong need of grace. Here are a table, a font, and a pulpit. Here the cross has central place. Here in honesty of preaching, here in silence as in speech, here in newness and renewal, God the Spirit comes to each.
The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with you all.
And also with you.
In peace let us pray to the Lord.
Lord, have mercy.
For the peace from above and for our salvation, let us pray to the Lord.
Lord, have mercy.
For the peace of the whole world, for the well-being of the Church of God, and for the unity of all, let us pray to the Lord.
Lord, have mercy.
For this holy house, and for all who offer here their worship and praise, let us pray to the Lord.
Lord, have mercy.
Help, save, comfort, and defend us, gracious Lord.
Amen. pray. Triune God, you have created us to live in loving community with one another. Help us heal our relationships. Teach us to trust like little children, that we may reflect the image of your Son, Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You, whose glory is chanted above the heavens, out of the mouths of infants and children. You have set up a fortress against your enemies to silence the foe and avenger.
O Lord, hear our prayer we offer up to you. O Lord, hear our prayer.
I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon, the stars you have set in their courses. What are mere mortals that you should be mindful of them? Human beings that you should care for them.
O Lord, hear our prayer we offer up to you. O Lord, hear our prayer.
Yet you have made them little less than divine. With glory and honor you crown them. You have made them rule over the works of your hands. You have put all things under their feet.
O Lord, hear our prayer we offer up to you. O Lord, hear our prayer.
All flocks and cattle, even the wild beasts of the field, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, and whatever passes along the paths of the sea. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth.
O Lord, hear our prayer we offer up to you. O Lord, hear our prayer.
Genesis 2, the Lord God said, "It is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper as his partner." So out of the ground, the Lord God formed every animal of the field and every bird of the air and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called everything living creature, that was its name. The man gave names to all the cattle and to the birds of the air and to every animal of the field. But for the man, there was not found a helper as his partner. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and he slept. Then he took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. And that rib, and the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. Then the man said, "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one shall be called woman, for out of man this one was taken. Therefore a man leaves his father and his mother and clings to his wife, and they become one flesh." Word of God, word of life.
Thanks be to God.
Hallelujah, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the word of eternal life. Hallelujah.
The Holy Gospel according to Mark. Glory to you, O Lord. Some Pharisees came, and to test Jesus, they asked, Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife? He answered them, What did Moses command you? They said, Moses allowed a man to write a certificate of dismissal and to divorce her. But Jesus said to them, Because of your hardness of heart, he wrote this commandment for you. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. Then in the house, the disciples asked him again about this matter. He said to them, Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery. People were bringing little children to him in order that he might touch them. And the disciples spoke sternly to them. But when Jesus saw this, he was indignant and said to them, Let the little children come to me. Do not stop them, for it is to such as these that the kingdom of God belongs. Truly I tell you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will never enter it. And he took them up in his arms, laid his hands on them, and blessed them. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. When I started seminary, there was always something going on between people. You can imagine, when there are 120 young people living, studying, eating, and worshiping together, there are lots of social interactions, including lots of love, many broken hearts, and lots of messiness in between. It's maybe not what people might think of a place with future pastors, but life isn't that different for us. We were mostly a bunch of college kids, dating, flirting, loving, separating, and starting all over again. Totally normal. Except that it happened in a kind of fishbowl with everybody observing, even the professors and docents. Yep, totally normal, except that we were theologians, pastors to be, which almost always comes with a sense of higher morality. Because we know what's right and wrong, and we will follow those rules, right? So we found ourselves in the most hypocritical situation ever. Being as young, naive, and sometimes plain stupid as everyone else in their early 20s, while carrying an esteem of being better. Of course we weren't. The only thing we were better at was at judging and shaming people who had done wrong in our eyes. And what could be a more righteous wrong to point out in a Christian context than adultery and divorce, right? So we did. We didn't only talk about the guy who left his wife for another woman whom he later married. We shamed them by ignoring them and giving them the eye. We felt like they needed to feel how awful this was for the wife. We also felt like we needed to pick sides when no one had asked us to do so. And I remember talking to my best friend about this guy, sharing my opinionated and judgy thoughts. And she listened patiently and then said, well, you don't have to have an opinion about this situation. It's none of your business, really. If you want to do something good, show the wife that you care about her. Everything else is something the three of them need to sort out, and no one else. The moment she said that, I knew she was right. Of course, I didn't admit it right away. I was too involved emotionally in the process. Not because I was friends with any of these three people, but because my parents had finally just gotten their divorce after years and years of my dad cheating on my mom. So this topic hit home for me. And I didn't feel ready to not condemn any man leaving his wife for someone else. Thank God for friends who will tell us hard truth and correct our path. And thank you, Jesus, for telling us right from wrong, especially when it's not what we think is right and wrong. I mean, what is it about us human beings and rules? We love making and enforcing rules, especially when they apply to others. And we love breaking rules when they seem unpleasant. We often try to substitute love and relationships with rules, and most importantly, with morals. Because morals allow us to really look down on others, to shame and blame them, and to feel much better about ourselves. Which is what today's gospel reveals in the most fascinating way. But one of the most peculiar topics of all times, about marriage, the intimate relationship between two people who decided to be one flesh, one bone, one community that will care for each other as if their life depended on it. And back then, in first century Palestine, lives did depend on it, especially the lives of women and children. Without the safety of marriage, they were deemed to be poor and abused. And it's not that long ago that this was the case in our Western world as well. I mean, even today, single moms and their children are still at highest risk to live in poverty. And today's gospel at first sight might feel like it sets up a general rule of marriage is forever, divorces aren't permitted by God. Yet that proves to be a very narrow-sighted way of reading it. The Pharisees want to test Jesus, asking him whether it's lawful for a man to divorce his wife. And they don't ask whether it's good or right or to be encouraged, but whether it's lawful. And they don't ask because they don't know the answer, but because they want to test Jesus. Why? Well, not too long before that, John the Baptist was beheaded when he condemned Herod's wedding with his brother's newly divorced wife. If Jesus plain out condemned divorces as well, they could summon him in front of Herod and get him killed too. Of course, Jesus reads their faces, intentions, and hearts, and he answers, giving the question right back at them. Now they have to prove how well versed they are in the Holy Scriptures. Of course, the answer is yes, it is lawful. Moses said so. Here the dispute could end. But Jesus uses the situation as a teaching moment. Just because something is lawful doesn't mean it's the best thing to do. The reason why Moses allows for divorce is humans' hardness of heart. What God actually intended from the beginning of creation was for two people, at that point all of humanity, to become one flesh. The lecture ends with the most cited sentence in weddings: therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. It's basically a life sentence. So, does Jesus condemn divorce? No, as always with Jesus, it's not that easy and straightforward. What Jesus insists on here is that marriages are something that one shouldn't enter lightheaded. While a relationship might strengthen both partners, divorces back in the days could be death sentences to the abandoned women and children who were seen as property of the man. While in many cultures women couldn't file for divorce no matter how bad the circumstances, men could claim that their wife wasn't pleasing them and let her go. Dispose of her like something he grew tired of. That Jesus clearly trounced by citing from the Torah. His message is always the same. Look out for the most vulnerable. Honor your relationships by working on them. That's what God intended for you, to be with an equal partner, bone from your bone. To be in relationship like one flesh. And becoming one flesh is not just about sex, obviously. It's about deeply caring for one another. So much that one might feel like one body, one bone, one flesh. So much that my partner's pain is my pain. My partner's joy is my joy, that our well-being is interwoven. While we always hear this story at weddings, implying that Adam and Eve were only made for marriage, That's by no means the case. First and foremost, Adam and Eve represent all of humanity. And humanity began with complete empathy and mutuality and similarity. When Jesus refers the nitpicking Pharisees back to Genesis, he tells them, this is not a legal question at its heart. It's about all human interactions, all human community. It's a spiritual question. God's dream for humankind is that we receive each other as partners and equals, as an extension of our own bones and flesh. Debbie Thomas writes, companions as essential, as vulnerable and as worthy of tenderness and protection as our own bodies. What hinders this dream is the hardness of our hearts. And so we often trade, as Debbie writes, partnership for power, mutuality for manipulation, empathy for egoism. Not just in romantic relationships, but in our relationships in general. So, what's the good news in all this morality and law talk? This ideal here of being one flesh through thick and thin, I believe, is not supposed to scare us, but to encourage us to look at our relationships. The ones that are life-giving to us and the ones that are not. No matter if it's a marriage or a different kind of relationship among lovers or friends, understood that way, sometimes a divorce is much more life-giving than holding on to a relationship in which the life sentence feels like a death sentence. The good news is that God made humans as men, women, and everybody in between. And you might remember my excursus a couple of months back on the inclusive and. To be in mutual life-giving relationships and friendships. Those are sacred. Those are to be nurtured and deepened. With that understanding, with breaking up a relationship that turned into something that takes away the zest of life, can be life-giving. It can restore equality and empathy, breaking the circle of power and pain. Or at least pointing to an end at some time. Just because God's dream for us is to live in love and respect with everybody doesn't mean it reflects our reality. It just reminds us that that's the goal. The idea, the great hope for humankind. To be at peace with each other. Which includes not judging others when their dream of lifelong love bursts. For whatever reason. What we're called to do is to make sure that whoever ends up vulnerable in the event of a separation, that those are taken care of. The children, often the women, sometimes the man, the ones deemed nobodies whom Jesus hugged and blessed. As Christians, we're by no means holier than others or even better. We aren't morally superior to anybody. What we might want to try is to be more honest, to be more vulnerable, to share what we care about and where we fail. Maybe, just maybe, we will start hearing other people's stories, and maybe, just maybe, we will see how their bones are just like our bones, how our flesh isn't so different after all. Maybe we will build more life-giving relationships with more people than we could ever imagine. Debbie Thomas's conclusion from 3 years ago still rings true. At this particular moment, when so many of us feel tired, angry, and bruised, God's dream for human community might feel like a pipe dream. Hardness of heart might feel easier and more accessible. Perhaps it is. But something in me thrills at the dream, even still, and I believe that's because God planted the dream deep into our hearts a long time ago and trusts us to keep it alive now. Bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, one humanity, perfect joy. This is the dream we were created for. Let's not give up on it. Amen. Amen.
If you but trust in God to guide you with gentle hand through all your ways, you'll find that God is there beside you when crosses come in trying days. Trust that in God's unchanging love, build on that rock that will not move. What gain is there in anxious weeping, in helpless anger and distress, if you are in the Savior's keeping? In sorrow will He love you thus, for Christ will go for you across, will bring you safe through every loss. Sing, pray, and keep God's ways unswerving. Offer your service faithfully. Trust heaven's word, though undeserving. You'll find God's promise true to be. This is our confidence indeed. God never fails in time of need.
Please join me, if you would, in confessing our faith through the words of the Apostles' Creed. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, God's only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended to the dead. On the third day, he rose again. He ascended into heaven. He is seated at the right hand of the Father, and he will come to judge the living and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, and the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen. Made children and heirs of God's promise, we pray for the church, the world, and all in need. We pray for faithful leaders. We pray for those discerning a call to ministry and for all seminarians. We especially pray today for Tori as she journeys with us and God. We pray for our church and the communities we serve. We pray for God's creation. We pray for the sense of wonder for the world you created and the will to protect it. We pray for firefighters and first responders. We pray for our relationships with communities. We pray for relationships between nations and people, that we celebrate and support one human family. We pray for all who live with any mental or physical illness. We pray for creative communities, spaces, and the environments that are accessible and hospitable. We pray for everyone affected by COVID-19. We pray for refugees, especially the ones from Haiti and Afghanistan arriving in the U.S. these days. We pray for welcoming communities, for the new friendships, and the outpouring of help and love. At this point in time, if you have a prayer that you would like to offer that we could hear, please unmute yourself and present it to us so that we can all pray with you to receive its blessing. Receive these prayers, O God, and those in our hearts, known only to you, through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Thanks for all you are, for all you do, and you give to help our congregation thrive and the world become a better place. There is a pull between fear of the future and belief in God's providence. We give our offering, God, stepping out in faith down the road of grace. We do this together, called and sent to be blessings for all the world. Amen.
Good morning. We're entering our consecration season, so I'm giving you a brief temple talk this morning. I just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. For years now, you've done the pledge cards and the time and talent sheets. And so we've got something very similar to that. As you know, the Stewardship Committee has been going through the Kaleidoscopes program. And so we've modified things a little bit different. And what we're looking for this year, we're going to take more of a holistic approach to our giving and our volunteering. If you look at the bottom of this card, you see we're not just asking us to think about our giving to the church, but also the giving to the community and the world. And so the same is true for the time and talents, which we're now sheets, which we're referring to as the gifts to give sheet now. So please take a look at this and again, give it kind of a holistic thought, what you want to contribute to the church and to other groups, and where you want to volunteer to the church and other groups. And the other thing I want to leave you with, as I look to the future and I look at the world and I see that some of the things I want to do for children and grandchildren, I can't do much because the bigger problems of the world, like housing costs and homelessness and climate change, they're much larger than any one of us can do on our own. And so we have to work as bigger groups. And so that's kind of consistent with this, that looking to work together and take on some of those bigger issues. So again, give this prayerful consideration on what you'd like to do. And someone might be able to help me with the logistics on this, but we're going to fill these out. I think we're going to have cards sent to us, and you can fill them out or return them, or there's also going to be an email option for that. So again, give it prayerful consideration as you've always done. Thanks.
Thanks, Cam. And Cam's right that the intent on the first part, the estimate of giving and the pledge, is that there will be 2 files emailed to you like last year, one that you can choose to print and mail back, PDF, or a Word doc that you can choose to email back to Debbie Pollock. And there'll be more information coming out on that. And then the gifts to give sheet will follow after that. Now we're moving on to the breakout rooms, and we want to build on what Cam's already been talking about the opportunity to give not just to the church, but to other nonprofits or charities. And so the breakout room today is to start thinking about those things. What nonprofits, organizations, or charities do you admire? We're leaving CTK and the ELCA out of that. What others do you admire and why? And then which of these do you support with prayer, time, financially, and which are active locally? Yes, there's a lot that needs to be done even internationally, but also the way that Kaleidoscope works is that we really want people to start thinking locally too. And so we'll open the breakout rooms now and give you a chance to just think about this together out loud. You just spent the breakout room talking about other options, other opportunities, other groups you admire, but we certainly don't want you forgetting Christ the King. And so the estimate of giving cards will be in the email early this week. And there is a goal, a deadline, the following Monday, October 11th. So please have them returned.
I was telling you about how exciting it was to work on our budget because we got a glimpse of all the great things that we plan on doing next year. And so that budget, of course, will only come true if we get pledges. So that's why this deadline is actually really important, because it means that we will have an exciting year planned out, in advance very soon. So thank you very much.
United at the table, all our joys joined in song. United in the faith, all our joy to God belongs. Cantaremos la bondad del Señor que nos sienta a su mesa y nos llama a comulgar. Como hermanos su vino y su pan, united at the table, all our joy is joined in song. United in the faith, all our joy to God belongs.
Wherever and whoever you are, communion with God is coming to you. Prepare to welcome your guest. The Lord be with us. We lift up our hearts. We lift them to the Lord. We give thanks to the Lord our God. With those who know who you are, and with those who don't know what to say, we lift our songs of praise to you.
Holy, holy, holy Lord, Lord God of power and might. Heaven and earth are full of your glory. Hosanna in the highest. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest.
I now invite you all to say the words of institution together with me so that they can be heard and said in every single one of our home churches. On the night in which he gave himself up for us, he took bread, gave thanks to you, broke the bread, gave it to his disciples and said, "Take, eat. This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." When the supper was over, he took the cup, gave thanks to you, gave it to his disciples and said, "Drink from this, all of you. This is my blood of the new covenant, poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me." Great is the mystery of faith. Christ has died. Christ
is risen.
Christ
Will come again. Jesus called God his Father. So do we. Please pray in the language and translation of your heart. Our Father in heaven,
Hallowed
hallowed be your name.
Your kingdom come.
Come,
Will be
your
done.
will be
On
done
earth
on
as in
earth
heaven.
as in
As
heaven.
today.
Today our daily
Give
bread.
today our daily bread.
Forgive us our sins. We forgive those who sin against us.
Forgive those who
Save
sin
us in the
against
time of
us.
trial.
Save us from the time of trial and deliver us
From you.
Power,
from
glory,
kingdom,
yours,
the
now
power,
and forever.
glory are yours,
Amen.
now and forever.
Amen.
Lamb of God, you take away the sin of the world. Have mercy on us. Lamb of God, you take away the sin of the world. Have mercy on us. Lamb of God, you take away the sin of the world. Grant us peace. Grant us peace.
God's gifts for God's people. The body of Christ given for you. The blood of Christ shed for you.
Although I speak with angels' tongue, my faith, my knowledge will surpass. But have no love, my gifts are vain, as clanging gong or glaring brass. For now we peer at darkened glass, our visions end, our tongues all cease. In part we know, in part now see, then we will see love face to face. The gifts are many, body one, and into one all are baptized. Beloved, share one heart, one mind, one hope, one faith, one love in Christ.
We are so grateful that you have brought this communion to us. May we surround with strength and comfort those we know and search out those we do not know, to offer hope and help widely and freely. Amen.
Now may God bless you and take good care of you. May God smile on you and be gracious to you. May God look on you with favor and give you peace. Amen.
Our next song today is an African American spiritual. Quite a good song. You might want to sing along or even get up and dance a little bit. It's called Every Time I Feel the Spirit. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. mountain, my Lord spoke. Out of his mouth came fire and smoke. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. All around me looks so fine. Ask my Lord if all was mine. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Jordan River, chilly and cold, chills the body but not the soul. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray.
Go now with God.
Covers
us
with
tender
mercies.
Go now with Christ our Lord.
Who
is
is
our
our
good
Who is our
companion.
good companion.
Go now with the Spirit.
Who
gives
gives
us
us good
us
food
food,
at the table,
living water to
living water
nourish
to nourish us.
To nourish us.
Go now knowing that God will direct your path.
As we
As we
continue
continue our
our
journey of
journey of faith. Amen.
Amen.